let's proceed. I hope for the few who did not have Visual Studio Community 2022, you are now able to access it. So with authentication, we are going to use the three-legged token. That means that in simple terms, you'll need to log in, and also we'll have the user context. That means the access token or the session is associated with a specific user. So we'll have, there's an additional learning which you can do during your own time on how to build automatic refreshing mechanism after the user logs in for the first time. Since the three-legged authentication flow does not support server to server logging in. There's a more modern method that was introduced, is in use. So we do have the SSL token, and we also, which we uses the robot user context. It behaves ideally like a two-legged token where you have the server to server authentication. I think majority of you do ask on how to authenticate server to server to get a three-legged authentication. So this is a good opportunity to go and read and learn on the same. So proceed. So what we're going to do in this session, so the first we are going to start with the authentication. We're going to create a controller for logging in, getting a callback once we initiate the login, logging out, getting the user profile. This is the profile after you log in. Then we are going to have a flow, a logical flow in using the APS.auth file where we are going to get our three-legged token and the user information. So we are going to use the authentication API for this step. So let's demonstrate. So the first step is to create a new project. So we are going to create a new project called My Forge app. So let's start. We open our Visual Studio 2022. Yes, so we create a new project. So for the template, we are going to use the ASP.NET Core Empty. So you can search it here, ASP.NET Core Empty. So it's a C# template. So we are going to select that, the C# template. After selecting that, we go double click it. So we have the project name. So it's going to be called My Forge app. So we have the location selected and all that. So we'll maintain that as it is. Go to next. So the next we are going to use .NET 8 long-term support. So we are not going to configure for HTTPS. So we uncheck this. And if you have the container support enabled checked, so kindly uncheck it. We are not going to containerize our application. And also, if you have the do not use top level statements checked, also please uncheck that. And once that is done, we go to the next. So we should be creating our project. So once we create now we should have a project created. So this is just an empty project, created our shell. So we need to build on the shell that we have created. So the first thing we do, so we go back to our tutorials page. So we have already done all the setup. So we are going to install our packages. So the first package we are going to install is the Autodesk Authentication. So how we are going to do that is we come back here to our project. On the project name, we right click. There is a manage NuGet packages option. at the middle, I think, of the option. So we click on the Manage NuGet Packages. It's going to load this. So since we are installing, click on the first tab, which is to browse. And since you're going to use beta versions, we have 2 beta versions we're going to use. So make sure you click this, select include pre-release. So this is important so that you don't encounter issues at the end of our tutorial. So please select the include pre-release in our browse section of NuGet manage NuGet packages. So once you click that, you'll be able to also install the beta versions of the packages. So the first package is Autodesk.authentication. So we install the latest stable. So as mentioned, we are going to install only the latest, be it a beta version or a stable version. So once you include the pre-release, it's going to give you the latest version. So let's install that. We apply. So we go back. The next one is data management. So let's install data management. Data management. So search for it. We have the latest stable. So we also install that. Apply. And that's our second package. So we proceed to our third package. So it's the Autodesk construction account admin. So this is a beta version. So Autodesk construction account admin, construction account admin. Sorry. So this is a beta 2. So if you don't see the beta 2, so you need to make sure you check the include pre-release. So let's install that. So once that is installed, we go to our final package, and that's the construction issues. So let's remove the account admin, and we have issues. So issues is beta 2. So we also install the pre-release beta 2. Click install, apply. So we have successfully installed our 4 packages that we need for today. So once we are done with the 4, we close it. Then we proceed with our tutorial. So we're going to create our first local file. That's the startup.cs. So let's go to our project, right click on it. We add a new item or a new class. Let's call it startup.cs. Sorry, seems my yes. So we call it startup.cs. It should be added. So we have the initial content. So we'll clear the content. We copy it here. So we paste it. I will explain this file in a few. So let's do the next file. And once we are done with the files, we'll come back, recap on what we have done. So the next is we're going to create our environment variables. So we go to development aspect. So we clear the content that is already here. We paste it. We save. Then we'll create a basic server. So we already have the program.cs file already existing, so we'll just replace the contents in that file. So we go back to our program.cs, we select everything, we paste, we save. Then we have the launch settings file. So our target is the application URL. So we can copy this line or we can copy everything and replace. So let's copy everything. This launch settings is in properties. So in our project properties, once we expand, we'll be able to see the launch settings.json. So we paste and we save. So before we try it out, let's just do a quick overview on what we have done. So we are initializing our application. So the first thing we are initializing is the client ID. So we are going to read it from our configuration. That's the app settings.development.json. So this is what we are going to read: client ID, client secret, and APS callback URL. Now, we come back to this. Let's concentrate first on the app settings.development.json. We need to replace the two variables with the app we created, and also we need to add this callback to our application. So let's quickly do that. So we select this, the URL. We go back to the app that we created earlier. For example, I created this app. So we scroll to the general settings. We have the callback URL. So I'll add the URL here. That's under in our app and general settings. For those who did this on Monday or Tuesday, you can skip this step since you already have the callback set. Then we are going to save. First of all, let's save. Then we'll replace the contents of our client ID. So we copy the client ID. We go back to our application. So we replace it here. So place our client ID here. Same as our client secret. So copy the same. We'll place it here. So on my end, these are for testing purposes. Of course, we normally delete them after today's training. So paste it, save. Once you've done that, we are good to go. So let's now proceed. The configuration is just the normal configuration. This checks if it's a development environment so that it can use the exception page. Since we are in local development mode, we are going to use the exception page. So you'll see a page with errors. If there's an error on your end, we'll use the default files and the static files. We'll add them later in our application. We'll use the routing and the endpoints for our controllers also to be added in a few. So launch settings, we did add the application URL. What this means is that our application is going to run on port 8080, hence the callback URL also mapping to port 8080. Later, we are going to create our authentication controller with the callback endpoint. So this ensures that our application runs on port 8080 so that once we have our controllers, everything works as expected. So we are done with the initial setup. So let's proceed. So we can try it out. Yes, we can try it out as mentioned. It will give us a 404 response. So let's just try it out. Start the debugging by clicking here. It should be able to build and open a web page, but with error 404. So if you get 404, that means that your application is working as expected. Yes, so our application is running. We have not implemented any logic yet. We have not implemented any page to handle what comes after the application launch. So 4.4 is expected, and if you have 4.4, you should be good to go. So maybe if you do not see 4.4, you can share on chat what is the issue. Oh yeah, Sebastian, yes, we forgot to add the 3 empty folders. We can add them now, or we can add them once we start, but I think we'll add them right now. Just the 3 empty folders. So the 3 empty folders were to be added at the top. So we have the controllers, models, and the ww root. So let's just add them. So these are just empty folders for now. We'll build on them later. So we add the 3 empty folders. So add new folder, www root. These will be used for static files later. Sorry, I added it. Okay, yes. Next, we add our controllers folder. So add folder, controllers. And finally, we add an empty folders that is going to handle our services. So called models. Yes, so we have added our empty folder. So we'll build on them in the next as we proceed. The next step is authentication. So let's proceed with the next step. We have the authentication. So we are going to create our first file. Remember, we created the empty folder, that's models. So let's create our first file. So under models, so create add, then class. So call it APS, add it. So we go back to our tutorial. So we have our code for APS, so we copy everything. We clear what we have here, the default code. So we paste our new code. So what this code is going to do is we're going to get the client ID, client secret, and callback URL from that are going to be initialized in our startup. So we are going to add the logic to pass those variables to this class. So we save this. The next, we create another partial class. That's the aps.cs. So let's create that and copy. So add a new class. So it's going to be called aps.auth.cs. So aps.auth.cs. Add it. So once we add it, we clear the default code, we paste our new code. So what is that? We are going to get our authorization URL, then we generate the tokens, then we'll also get our refresh token and also get our user profile using this. So we go to next. Remember, we were supposed to pass our variables. So this is the line that we'll add, the specific line, this specific line. So we'll add, it's going to pass our client ID, client secret, and call back to the APS class. So we can add this specific line, or we can copy the entire code and replace what we had. So for now, let's just add this specific line. We come back to startup. Below the if functionality, we paste it here. So if you get this error, this means that either of these three is empty or null. So we have the client ID, client secret, and callback URL that we added under app settings. So if you expand app settings, we had the app settings.development.json. So this is where we added our variables. So if you get that error, it means that either of the three is missing. So check and add them back. So we proceed. So we'll have our first controller and register our first endpoint. So we're going to create a controller class. So let's create a controller here. So auth controller. So we have it here. So clear the contents. We come here. So we have the contents of the controller. Let's copy that, paste it. So what this does, we have the preparation of tokens where we are going to check if we already have the token or not. Then we return. So if we don't have the token in our cookie, we return null. But if we do have them, we return the token. Also, if the token is expiring, we'll refresh the same and return. So we have the login endpoint. So the login endpoint just does that. So just to log in using our credentials. Then we have the logout. The logout is to revoke and clear our cookies. So we revoke the current access token locally by clearing the cookies. We have also the callback. So the callback, after you have input your username or email and password, we are going to get a callback with a code. This is a code that we're going to use to generate our tokens. Then finally, we have the profile section. So the profile section is to get our details. So the current logged in user details. So we proceed to the next section is to try it out. So we start this application. So we save everything. We run the application. It should bring up a window. Yes, so it gives us the localhost page can't be found. But if we navigate to API, we created our first controller. That's the auth. Then the login endpoint. So if you go to that, yes, you should be prompted with a screen to log in. So once you log in, so for example, if we do login, so I've logged in. I had an active session. So if we want to confirm that the login was successful, we come to the settings. So we come to the more tools. Let me repeat that again. So at the top right section, next to the profile icon, we have the three dots. So click on the settings, we come to more tools, then we go to the last option, that's the developer tools. So I already had them, so it closed. So let me open them. Yes. So then we come to the last element, that's the application. Then under the application, we do have the application, then storage, cookies. So we concentrate on the cookies under storage. In the URL, you'll see we have the expires at. You should also see the internal token, and also you should be able to see the refresh token. So you should be able to see the three with their values. So this means that you are logged in and you should be okay. So we can also test, I think we can test the profile section. Yes. So if we also go to the profile section, we should be able to see the name. That's what we are currently retrieving. So you should, once you see the two, that's the cookies. And if you go to the profile, you are able to see your name. Then That means that the application is working as expected. And we can now proceed to the next section. That's the project browsing. So we first create our first partial class. That's the aps.hubs.cs. So let's stop this from running. We create new, add a new class. So aps.hubs, we clear this section. So we'll copy the contents of this and then paste it here. So this is to get the hubs and the projects. We're going to build our tree, of course, in the end. So we are slowly building into it. So next we create the controller. That's the endpoints for that. So we'll create our hubs controller. So we add a new controller here. So we can copy the same, paste it here. So the aps.hubs was handling the logic. So we have the endpoints that are going to access the hubs in the aps.hubs. So our endpoints are good. So we proceed. So we can try it out and see if we have our hubs. We are going to get a list of our hubs, or we can also try to get projects from sample hub. So let's run our application again. So we can try to log in, API, out, login. So we are logged in. So let's try API, apps to get a list of apps. So we have our hubs listed. So we are interested with the hubs with the prefix of B. So this is the hub I'm interested in. So we can use this as a sample. I think we can copy. We can also try to get the projects from the same. So we do that. Hubs, we have the hub ID. Let's remove that. Then we do have the project, so we'll do the projects. Yes, so we are able to get a sample list of projects. So let's proceed. And we stop that. So we have the list, and since we already have the list of projects, let's do a quick recap in our presentation. So we are done with the controller. So we are done with the projects. So we are able to list our project. So the next is getting the issues from our project. So we're going to have a look at the project issues. So the endpoint. So we are going to create an issues the controller for the endpoint. So we are going to get the issues by project ID. Then we are going to have a service. So that's aps.issues to contain the logic for getting issue, creating and patching an issue. So the API is used, shared the API link before. So the API is used from that link is the get issues, create issue, and patch an issue. So the scope for the token maintained is data read and data write. So this is a sample JSON response that we are going to that we'll get, but we might not get all the details in this sample, but this is sample. Many more details in the API. You can take a look during the free time after this session to see how best you can implement the issues API in your own way. So we do have the pagination. So we're going to normally, of course, start at 0. Then we have the limit, the maximum number of pages to be returned. And normally for the API, you can have a look at it. There is a maximum number of records you can retrieve. And there's also the default number of records that can be returned. So this helps, especially when you have the rate limit, you hit the rate limit more often. So if you find that maybe the limit for the API is 25 records and the maximum it can support is 200 records. So to reduce the number of times you call the API, you can increase the number of results to be returned from the default to the maximum supported in the specified endpoint. So this will reduce the number of times you're going to hit the API and hence reducing the errors that you're going to get pertaining to 429 rate limit reached. So for the import, we're going to look at the payload, that's the title, the subtype ID, and the status. So we are going to demo the same and also look at the due dates, root cause ID, the published date, who the issue is assigned to, and the assigned to type. So the permitted statuses, we looked at the statuses on the ACC dashboard that are system defined. That's from the draft to the final, I think it was closed. Completed. So we have them here on the right side. So we have this permitted statuses. There are many more, so you can have a look at them once you begin toying with the API. So we start with implement a simple endpoint to get the project issues. So we go back to our tutorial. So we'll create our first model to handle the logic. So it's aps.issues.cs. So let's create that. So in models, we add a new class. Sorry, it's missing.cs. Yes. So clear everything. We copy the structure, the initial structure, we save. So we have our initial structure. So let's start an addition. So the first thing we are going to do is create the logic for getting the issues. So this is going to extract the issues based on the project ID that we are going to pass. So we save that. We'll create a controller for it later. And next, we're going to have logic for creating or updating an issue. So copy. So we paste. So as you can see, so we do have the project ID that is required. Then we do have a body where we're going to pass in the contents. So once we pass in the contents, so we are going to loop through the body and extract the issue. Then we'll make a decision. If we do have an ID present, we're going to update. But if the ID is null or empty, we are going to create. So for example, this creates, because the ID is null, we're going to create a new issue. But if the ID is passed, that's the issue ID, we are going to patch or update the same. So we proceed. So we are going to create now our controller, issue controller. So let's create that. Add just a new class. So issue controller. So once we have our controller, we delete everything in here. Then we take this, we paste. So we do have saying we do not have the get issues. We do have the issues here. Okay. We do have our API, so okay. I think that should be able to fix. I think we might need to recreate this again. So let's just recreate this. The content. So let's recreate that. Clear the content, create it. Yes, so that solves it. So we proceed. So let's explain the controller. So the first endpoint is to list issues. So we'll pass in the project ID and get all the issues in the project. Then we can, as mentioned, we can create or modify the issue. So the difference here will be the ID, if we're going to pass the issue ID or not. After that, we should be able to test now our endpoint. So let's try it out. So let's start our local server. So as you can see from the tutorial, this is the URL that we are going to follow. So we again try to authenticate. Once we have authenticated, you can now get the hubs. So let's get the hubs. Once you get the hubs, we can now get the projects. So once we have the projects, we can get the issues. So it's localhost, port is 8080, API, issues, and the project ID. You can take from this sample. So let's copy. So yeah, this should work. Let's see if we do have, yeah, we do have an issue. And if you don't have an issue, you can always go back to the ACC, the UI. So for example, I can go to the projects. I was using the sample project one. We can create it later in the UI. So I just want everybody who doesn't have any data to be able to see at least one issue. So come to the issues section, and you can create an issue like we did in the first session. So once you do that, you'll be able to see all your issues listed here. So once you see the list of your issues, that means we are still cruising nicely. So let's proceed. So we do have our issues. So the next step is to get the settings. Also, you can create the issue. For those who want to use Postman, I shared the Postman collection early. So you can use the same with the endpoint, with the data listed here. So you can replace whatever you have in your Postman body with this, or you can create your own title. Just make sure that the ID, if you are updating, you need to pass the ID. And if you are creating a new issue, please remove the ID. and also note the issue subtype by ID before proceeding. So if you get an issue, you can use the issue that you have gotten. For example, in our result, we do have the issue subtype ID. Yeah, this issue ID here. Then we do have the issue sub ID next. So you can use these, the two, you can use the subtype ID in here to create your issue. So we'll do next, we go to the settings. I hope everybody is able to get that. So let's do the issue settings. So as seen from the UI in the first session, we do have the types, we do have the root causes and custom attribute definitions and the user permissions. So we are going to look at the issues. So we are going to get the subtypes. We are going to get the root causes, the custom attribute definitions, the user profile. For today, we are not going to do the permissions. So we are only going to do the 4. Then we are going to expand our services. We have already created that. So we are going to add more to it. So we are going to get the issue subtypes. We are going to get the root causes, the custom attribute definitions, and the issue user profile. So the APIs used from the APIs link we shared earlier is the get the issues types, including the subtypes, the root causes, categories, that includes the root causes, the issue attribute definitions, and the profile. So the user profile will have the following. So we'll get to know if it's the user profile is the project admin. Then we'll have the issues. So indicate if we can create or modify a user, an issue. We also have the statuses. We'll have the actions, and we'll also see the permission levels. So let's do a quick demonstration. So we already have the APS issues. So we'll just continue with the building on it. So let's copy that. We go back to our aps.issues, stop this server. So APS issues, we do have it there. So we already built the create modifier. We do have the get issues. So we'll continue. So just before the last curly bracket, we paste our endpoint. So what we have is get issue. So we start from here. So we have the get issue subtypes. We have the get issue root causes. And then we have the get issue custom attribute definitions. Then we'll build on our issues controller. So let's copy that. We already started. So we proceed. So we do have this. So post includes null resolver. So we leave it alone. So before the last create or modify, I think after create or modify endpoint, let's add the 3 new endpoints. So I think we are create or modify. Yes. So we do have the list issue subtypes. We do have the list root causes. We do have the list custom attributes and the issue user profile. So I think the next course of action is to test our endpoint. So what are the URLs we're going to test? So we're going to use the issues, the subtypes, and have the project ID. So let's do that. Let's start our local server. Let's try to log in, just to confirm the session is still active. Then we can get the projects. So let's copy the URL that we are using. So we have the local host, subtypes, project ID. So project ID is what we have copied. And let's remove the prefix, that's the B. We load. Yes, and we are able now to get the subtypes. So if you are able to see that, that means that you have successfully implemented the subtypes endpoint. So if you have an issue that you have not loaded the data, feel free to use the chat before we proceed. Just ask a question, or if you have an error, kindly share the error so that we can have a look before we proceed. Okay, so seems everybody's okay. So let's proceed. Next, we'll do the project admin. So we are going to create a new controller for the admin endpoint. So we're going to create admin controller. So we'll have the project users. After getting the project users, now we can get the user profile. So we do have the project company's endpoint, but it does support the two-legged authentication. This is also described on the API documentation we shared earlier. So for get project roles, there is no API at the time. We do have a data connector API that you can use to extract the same. So if you want the project roles and actually more data that is not exposed via API, you can use the data connector API to extract, to run a job. So you can schedule jobs daily, weekly, I think monthly. And you can, once you create a job, you can add a callback so that, and also you can also add an email so that once the job is done, they can share, you'll receive the response via the callback, and also you'll receive the email that the job you initiated has been completed, be it on a weekly basis, on daily basis, whichever you want, and the number of times you want the same to run. So you can set it weekly, but have 3 of them running weekly. So these will be helpful if you need more information from the project or account. So this access token scope is account read for those who are going to do it via Postman or create your own APIs. So let's proceed with the demonstration for project admin. So first of all, we stop our server and proceed. So the first thing we'll create is our partial class. That's the aps.admin.cs. So let's create that. We go to our project. So under models, let's add a new class. So aps.admin, we clear everything. We go back. We copy what we have here. We paste it. We save. So these will get project users based on the project ID we are passing. So this is our logic. Our logic is done. So we go back, proceed to create our controller. So let's create admin controller. So under controller, let's add a new item or a class, admin controller.cs. We clear everything. So copy, go back, we paste it. So it only has one endpoint as of now. So we have the project users where we're going to list all the users in a project. Then let's try it out. So the URL is this. So we do have the project users, admin, project users. these the project users, then we'll pass the project ID. So let's start our local server. It's starting and it's running. So we can start with the authentication, get hubs, get projects, but we can also skip that since we have been doing that. So we already have that. So I think we used these as our project. So you can see now they have been responded. So we did create admin 1 up to admin 5, I think. So we do have all the users. And also for those who do have JSON formatter in your browser as an add-on, you should be able to see this data formatted nicely. Mine is not formatted, but for those who have the JSON formatter, you can have a look at that. So we are done with the project admin. We have retrieved our users in the project successfully. So let's proceed to our final session of today. That's the UI framework. So we have been building on the API, so returning data in JSON format. So we have not been visualizing the data. So this session, we are going to visualize this data in a table and tabular format. So let's begin. So in our UI, we are going now to create our static files in the www root. So we are first going to create our index HTML. We're going to create our styling using main.css. We're also going to create our sidebar. Our sidebar would be to create the hub plus the project tree. Then we are going to have the table.js to view our data in a tabular format. And finally, main.js to initialize the tree and the table. So this is what our table and sidebar and also the tabs are going to look like. So we are going to have issues tab, user tab, subtypes, root causes, and custom attributes definitions. So let's do a quick demonstration of a simple table. So let's continue with our tutorial. So let's stop our server. So let's proceed to the UI framework. So we create our first file, that's table.js. So let's create that. We go to our projects under www root. So we'll add a new item. This is going to be a script. So a JavaScript file, table.js. We copy the content. We come here and we paste. We save. So before we explain it, let's just create the sidebar. So I'll create the sidebar.js. So let's create that. So can add a new item or first just delete everything. Copy, paste, we save. And next we'll add the main.js to handle the sidebar tree and also the table. So add a new item. So let's replace the content. Then we'll also add the styling, and that's main.css. So let's add a new item and web. We have the content. So spreadsheet. So add main.css. copy the contents, we save. Then finally, we add the index.html. So add a new item. So still under content. So let's add a new item under content, index.html. Copy the contents and we save. So let's try to explain what each of these does before we finally try it out. So this is the main structure. So we do have our header. So we do have a logo. Currently, we have a Autodesk logo. We have our title for the page, that's ACC issues. And we do have a button for the login. Once we log in, it will be replaced by the logout and the user profile. That's the name. So we have our sidebar where we're going to load the hubs or accounts, and on click, it will show a tree with the projects. Then we'll have our tabs, which we explained earlier. Then the tabs are going to load data into the table. So the CSS is for styling, and the styling, that means the colors, the layout, the font, that's the font style, the font weight, and also the, having the size and also the animations. Then we do have the main.js. It initializes the tree, that's the sidebar, and also initializes a table. So as mentioned, the sidebar is to load our hubs, which will in turn load our projects under each hub. So once you expand a hub, you are going to see the projects under it. Then we have the table that is going to load all the data we need today. That's the issue subtypes, the custom definitions, and also I think we do have the issue categories. So let's try it out. Now you should not see the 404. You should be able to see a landing page. So let's try it out and see our landing page. So as you can see, we have a landing page. So if you followed how we have been doing it, so you should be able to see this. So you should see the account or the hub that you did your custom integration. So for example, I did my custom integration in this. So this is the ACC hub. You can see all the projects. These are other sample hubs, but if you look at the ID, like we did early, you will find that they are not, the prefix is not b dot that we are looking for. So for example, let's just go to hubs. So you can see the prefix here is a dot, the prefix here is a dot. So you're not interested in the two. We did our custom integration here. And also I'm a member in this, so you can see it. So, but you should only be able to, we are interested in this. So let's expand that. You can see we have not implemented the logic to load the data here, but as you can see, we can expand the projects from the apps. So if you are able to do that, that means that you have successfully implemented our first table. Now, the next point is, or the next step is to load data here. So let's proceed. I hope everybody is able to see these screenshots after running their local server. So proceed. And let's first of all proceed with our presentation. So the next step is to export, import, and also view the data. So we are going to draw the table. We are also going to get now the columns after rendering the data. Remember previously we were rendering JSON. Now we are going to load the JSON into a table. We are going to have custom buttons. This is to export data into CSV and also to import data in a CSV format. So let's do a quick demo on that. Let's stop server first. So for the export, we are going to replace our class table. So we go back to our class table. So this is what is going to change. So let's go back to our class table. We can just collapse this class. This class table is what we are interested in. So select the class table, have our new class. So the next section, as you can see, the class table, now we are able to implement the data. We can, as I said, the data, we can draw the table and have the data in the table. We can export to CSV. That's what we have implemented. Next, we are going to see the import issues. So we copy this section. We have already implemented the export to CSV. So below this, just add the export, import, and save. After doing that, now I think we'll be able to restart our server and see what it brings up. So let's try it out. So it's going to load our HUDs again, expand it. You can see our sample projects. Let's click on one project. Now you can see the data loaded. This is the issue that we created in the first session. So we have the issue. We do have the users in that project. These are the users that we imported on day one of our session. We do have the issue subtypes. We have loaded all the issue subtypes that we are able to see on the ACC admin dashboard. We do have the root causes, the custom attributes. We have not defined anything. The custom attribute definitions, we did not define any, so we don't have any. And finally, a user profile, which is my user profile. So we can import, as mentioned. So we can import by clicking there. Alternatively, you can also export. So what we'll do to demonstrate the importing, so we'll open this and see the format. We use the same format to import. So as mentioned earlier, if we retain the ID, that means we are updating or patching. So what we do is just, we can remove this. And since we need the title, we can say sample issue 2 and save. So we can save. Let's use the same. Let's import now. Should be able to reflect after synchronizing. I think we can remove more data if it's not synchronized. Okay, we can open it again and downloads. So, okay, but as we can see, so we can just the data here. So have the title, description, the issue subtype ID, and the issue type. We have the status, then these are the columns. I think they're not needed. So these are the first 5 columns are important. So once you have multiple issues, you can import them. Then they will be listed below. So we can proceed for now. So I think we have finalized with our presentation. We have displayed our data, although we did not fully implement the importation, just the exporting. So we have finalized. We are able to display our data below. There is optional learning. So if you want to do optional learning, we shared a Postman collection. I showed you how to get a three-legged token. Of course, you need to add the Postman callback URL to your callback in the application. Then, as mentioned, you can create comments on each issue. So we did create comments in the UI. That's the ACC dashboard. So you can use the API to do the same. There's an SDK method to do that. You can create and update the custom attributes. So there are APIs for that. Sorry. And also the Postman collection has the same. So during your own free time, you can do that. You can also download attachments from the issues. So there is an API for that. And you can also upload attachments. There is a tutorial in the links that we shared. There is how to. You can have a look at that, or you can have a look at the tutorials on how to add attachments to the issue via API. You can also add references to the issue. So these references can come from photos, documents, an asset, or a form. So you can add the reference to the issue once you create the issue. Then we also say that we do have webhooks. So for webhooks, you can create your own webhook to get notification or to get data when an issue is created, when an issue is updated, deleted, restored, or unlinked. So this can be done, and during your free time, you can see how to implement that. There is a tutorial for the same. So thank you.